Okay, so our goal for today is to create a custom CSS file and have it linked to your mockups as you create these. These files, what we'll be designing is not what we'll use in our final product. Our final product won't have a single file that uses index.html. Do you remember what we'll have instead of a single HTML that builds our homepage? What will we use in addition to index.html? Who can remember from a base. So we'll use a base template that is like our picture frame. And the contents of what goes in the center of that picture frame will be our homepage. But all of this junk that's at the top of our index and at the bottom, the footer, so a lot of the stuff that's at the bottom and at the top of our mockup files will not actually be there in our final product. So these mockups are just that. They're mockups. The final result will be different. So do not spend a painful amount of time in the mockups. This is an early draft that will be very helpful when we're actually building our app. But this is an initial draft. A lot of this HTML code that I'll work on, I will just copy and paste into the final version. But everything, a lot of the sources, a lot of everything that's in the head atop, all of this will be carefully manipulated and changed when I go to the final version. But what I can start working on right now, and what is my primary focus, is this custom.css. And that's our goal for right now. So first of all, make sure you can find your CSS folder. So find your CSS folder in your mockup HTML drive and make sure it has a custom.css. If there is no custom.css, create a new file for custom.css and label it custom.css. All right, I'll come around and see if anyone needs help. What Charlie just did, he noticed inside his CSS folder, there was his theme CSS, and then there was a theme, and it was a theme -dark. So he had a dark colored theme as well as his normal theme. And so what he did is inside index.html, he was able to see that where it had his theme, he just changed it, so he did the theme -dark version. Based on, and you might have some that have like different colors or primary colors, so you can start that as your base layer. But what's important about this exercise is that our custom file gets loaded after that. So we get the final say, the last word. So all of the styles and rules about how things will look get loaded by the themes CSS first, and then ours will overwrite whatever customizations that we want to make on that. And that's important modularization, that our stuff gets loaded second, so that we don't need to make any changes to the built-in CSS files. That way we can upgrade these, we can replace them if we ever need to, and we won't lose our customizations because they're kept in a separate layer. So this is totally essential. We don't want to delete this. Those are all of the styles that come with your site. We might want to change some of those colors and shapes to represent our theme's colors. So that's why, in addition to those base styles, we will have our custom. So as long as your custom file is the last, so right above head, where head gets closed here, so right above this closing tag should be your custom CSS. Even if the rest of your CSS files are loaded way too early, our custom CSS should be the last file. So, and if a custom didn't come with your theme, which usually it doesn't, except for in the big groups case, you will know a web page has been worked on because that HTML file has a custom.css right at the last line. So, and you can add in a comment right above it. Our custom file gets the last word. And you can space it out even if you really wanted to. All right. So raise your hand if you have a problem getting to this. Okay. All right. So once you have the custom CSS linked, we can now take a look at our custom CSS file. You want to note the colors that you're using. So the first step is to pick out a color palette. I use this website because I have no aesthetic skill myself, so I just pick out a pre-existing color palette, and then I use the Adobe Color Wheel to get dark and light monochromatic shades of that primary color, so that way if it's highlighting and it's glowing, it's there. If it's faded out and disabled, then it's that version of this same color. So that way I have dark and brighter versions of my primary shade. My secondary shade is another color, alternate secondary. So these three sort of make up the primary colors that I'm using. I'll usually have an accent color, which is sort of a bit of brightness that I'll splash here or there, an icon. My accent color is what I'll use for my call to action, my big button that I want people's attention to gravitate. It will be my accent color. So picking out your color palette is important, and it needs to be the first comment at the top of every CSS project I ever work on. Will always have this little bit here that you can reference down below. If we were using SCSS, we would make variable names for these. We are not that sophisticated with our CSS yet, so we're just making little text comments. Okay, next up after this, after you make your color selections, are going to be our fonts. And so first we want to set what our base body font is. So this is going to be the default font for every unit. I don't know why is this? Oh, all right, it's just empty. So this is going to be font, family, and what is your font family? I am not making a final product. Mine is a starter template. So I'm just going to use the font family that they're using. So this you should usually have a font family, means a list. So you don't want to just have a single font, because if there's a error on loading this file, then it'll go to the default. And the default sans serif, or whatever default system font may help. Sans serif will just load one without serifs. This is a serif font. You can tell because sticking out of the eye right here are little serifs, which are those little stick things that come out of the eye that make it slightly easier to read. That's what a serif looks like. All right. So, sans serif, just Latin for without serifs, which are those little stick things. Modern fonts are sans serif. They give you like a futuristic sort of feel. Serif fonts have more authority and look a little bit more old school. So if you were building something that you wanted to have a lot of weight and gravity, then you would say, hey, maybe I want to use a serif font. If you want bold, something with a little more drama and appeal, you would use like a grotesque font, which is sans serif, super chunky. If you want, so I'm being lazy and I'm just copying the fonts from the CSS file that's already there. You shouldn't do that. You should pick out your own fonts. How do you pick out your own fonts, Mr. A? Well, good question. You go to fonts.google.com and we shop for fonts. And this is actually sort of a fun process. I recommend starting with the header first. What do you want to be your bold header? Right, so it should be there somewhere, but if you rediscover what you want as your header, that's fine. Lobster, classic. Yeah, I mean, so there's no rules. Just I recommend finding something on Google Fonts because it loads very quickly, and they're reliable, and you can download them. This Acme is fun. That's casual, but still kind of trendy. All right. Convinced. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to select this font, but now I want to find a body font. So if this is my header, I want to find a body font that complements this well. There's Montserrat, which is already loaded in my theme. Here's Open Sans. I like that. Roboto. Lato. I'm already using Lato as my body, so I think I might just stick with this. So Acme as my header font, Lato as my body font. So all I need to do now is link this, connect this font file that Google hosts for me, connect it to my project, and it tells me how to do that right here. But I might also want other versions of this font, but there are no other checkboxes for me. So this one is fine. I will copy this, and now to connect this font, I need to, well, one of the ways I can do this, besides, I could also import this using Css Import. So I could import it in my CSS file directly, or HTML. If I wanted to connect to it via HTML, all I'd have to do is under, in my index.html, I'll see where it imports other fonts. Here's where it's importing Lato, which is the body font I will still want to use. But Montserrat, I'm cutting out of the picture. And so instead, I'm connecting Acme as my header font. So now I can reflect that. So I just made that decision. I imported that font. You can import more than one on a single line. Google will do that for you. If you had selected more than one over here, it would have combined the two into a single import. And so that's my body font. I'm sticking with Lato. But now for my H1, my H2, my H3, 4, 5, and 6, all my headers, I'm now using the font family linked right here. And I will specify that there. So now I've set up the fonts for my project, Lato and Acme. And I know that even though I don't have the attached files downloaded in some sort of fonts folder here, they're hosted online and connected here. If you change your fonts, then you will either need to change every HTML file that you mock up, or have the import on your custom.css, and that you only need to import once. We don't need to worry about this, because once we create a base template in our Flask project, our base template will have our single link, and then every page on our HTML project, every page in our Flask project rather, will all load that base HTML file, including the imports that we create. So again, that's the difference between the mock-up process and the final process. The mock-up process is a little bit messier. Okay, so colors and fonts we have set up well in advance. Now I can start working on the particulars of this file. So I'll right-click on the file that I'm working on, and then I'll reveal in Finder or Explorer, whatever OS you're working on. Double-click on it, and so this, now I can see my fonts have already changed. These headers are now showing my new font. I like this. This is great. And so, and this is my Lato body font, which was the same anyway. So I'm now going to customize this this content. So I want to make this look like my home page. So I'm just going to change this title, Start Bootstrap. So I'll find where it says Start Bootstrap. It'll be down here. There it is. And I'll call this Flaskini, which is the name of my project that I'm working on. And I'll Alt-Tab back here, Control-R, there we go. I'm making changes. So this process, for a while, is just going to be replacing things so I get the look of what I'm trying to build as my home page. So, and I want to swap these colors out, so I'll make a new CSS rule to do that.